The AFC Championship game is set next Sunday in the Mile High City as the Denver Broncos host the New England Patriots in a matchup that will determine who goes to Super Bowl 60.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It all comes down to this. A trip to the Super Bowl hinges on the Denver Broncos matchup on Sunday of next week in the AFC Championship game against the New England Patriots. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the country. That's thanks to all of you everydayers out there in Broncos country. Thanks for tuning in, making us your first listen however you choose to do so. We got a lot to break down here as the Broncos now know who they will host in the AFC Championship game next week. We'll talk about Jarrett Stidham and why he gets the chance to lead the way now going forward after Bo Nix's season-ending injury against the Buffalo Bills, against the New England Patriots. We'll look at some of those early on storylines here. Plus, where can Jarrett Stidham help out the Broncos offense? There are a handful of different things that we saw in the preseason that will give us a little bit of an idea as to what he can do well here, stepping in for Bo Nix. And on top of that, could the Broncos get J.K. Dobbins back this week after he was on the side field last week? We'll go through that and some other injury updates on today's episode of the show, brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel. And FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel, they are giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Cody Roark, credentialed Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports and Broncos country. What a weekend it has been. An emotional roller coaster from the highs of the Denver Broncos beating the Buffalo Bills in the AFC divisional round in overtime to the lows of just finding out hours after the game ended that Bo Nix, his season would be over after suffering a fractured bone in his ankle that he is now set to get surgery on here on Tuesday. So now what does this mean for the Broncos as they now at the 1 seed get to host the AFC Championship against the New England Patriots, who took care of business in Foxborough on Sunday against the Houston Texans? It is a matchup 10 years after the fact. The last time we saw Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady, the last time the Denver Broncos hosted an AFC Championship game, it was 10 years ago in the Mile High City, with the winner of that game getting to punch their ticket to Santa Clara for Super Bowl 50. 10 years later, the same storyline reveals itself. A win in this matchup on Sunday for Denver punches their ticket back to Santa Clara 10 years after the fact to the same exact venue that they won it 10 years ago before Peyton Manning rode off into the sunset. We were all anticipating a Bo Nix versus Drake May AFC Championship game, and we were moments away from being able to get that until Bo suffered the season-ending injury in the game against the Buffalo Bills. But now it will be Jarrett Stidham against the New England Patriots, their stingy defense that they have, and the Broncos defense against Drake May and the explosive offense that certainly they have here. And there's so much that we'll break down all throughout the entire week here on Locked On Broncos about that matchup. But let's talk about the biggest storyline here, and that is Jarrett Stidham getting the chance to get the start here for the Broncos the rest of the way. And we talked about it. The New England Patriots defense, they are tough. They have tough level players. You have Jonah Ellis's brother who plays on the other side, Christian Ellis. He plays linebacker for the Patriots defense. They're very disciplined from a coverage standpoint. And once again, you're getting another defense that will balance up the sky's looks with zone pressure, with zone coverage, and occasionally they'll match up man-to-man from time to time. The Broncos offense, they're going to need their best effort here going forward. And I think for everybody right now coming into this week, everyone thinking in the national media, they're thinking that Denver doesn't have a chance in this. There are Broncos fans who are commenting on our show saying, oh, Denver is done. I think not having Bo Nix, yes, we can sit here and we can acknowledge this is a massive blow to the Broncos because Bo Nix has been so important and so instrumental in Denver getting to this point here in an AFC Championship game. Go back to the playoff game that we saw on Saturday. Denver down 27-23. Bo Nix had a legacy drive against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills to give them the lead there. And then ultimately Denver wins this game in overtime. And it's crazy that we don't get to see that. Yes, Denver, the optics of them, a lot of people are saying, well, that Denver doesn't have a chance. And the fans that are saying that Denver doesn't have a chance, here's my one thing that I'll say to you. Don't even watch the game next week. If you were going to have that stance, I think you can be skeptical and say, I don't know how Denver's going to stack up against New England without Bo. I think it's fair to have those questions, but to say that they don't have a chance, we've seen some stranger things happen in the NFL, and it's not like it's this unworldly chance. We're not talking about the Broncos relying on Chad Kelly of all people to lead them to the Super Bowl. Here's the thing about Jarrett Stidham. He's experienced in Sean Payton's system, and one thing that Sean told us was that Stidham is ready. He'll be ready for the moment because he's been in the system for 3 years, and Denver's going to put together a game plan. I think when you look at Sean Payton historically, when Drew Brees has gone down with an injury, other quarterbacks in New Orleans have gone down, what have we seen happen? We've seen guys like Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill step up, and the Saints offense still find ways to win games. We've seen Jameis Winston step in, and the Saints still find ways to win games here. Yes, it is a big blow that Bo is not going to be available. I can't overstate that enough here. But to act like Denver doesn't have a chance, I think that's wrong. I think when we're going to dive into it, obviously on today's show, what Stidham can do to help the offense, we can look at his skill set, his strengths, his weaknesses. But the Broncos are going to put together a game plan here. Now that you know who your opponent is, you don't have ambiguity going into this week. The Broncos, they've kind of been a step ahead of this here. They're going to have a nice little game plan here for New England and their defense that's stingy and aggressive. And so much of this week, I think, is going to be not only Stidham being able to hit the throws that you need to hit, but on top of that, I think it's an effort to get the run game established here, which has not been the case here for the Broncos offense consistently all season long with RJ Harvey, Jaleel McLaughlin. You go back to the Buffalo game here on Saturday, those guys had 10 total carries on offense in the rushing game combined in the game against the Buffalo Bills. That cannot be the formula. You can't win playing that type of football here. And certainly you don't want to have Jarrett Stidham have to drop back and throw the ball 42 to 45 times in a game. I'd even say 35 times in a game is far too much. There has to be good balance here, especially with Denver's defense. Yes, they struggled to get stops consistently against the Buffalo Bills. They gave up a lot of yards, and they almost choked away that game. But the defense forced 5 takeaways. And when you look at the New England Patriots, you look at what we just saw from them against the Houston Texans. Granted, another very good defense. I would say Houston had the best defense remaining in the NFL playoffs till they got eliminated here. But now you have a matchup against this Broncos defense that now has some momentum, has some rhythm to them. They're healthy defensively, and they're able to generate takeaways, which has now been a theme for them in the last 2 games that they have played. Sean Payton has emphasized how important it is to win the turnover margin, and that's what the defense has gone out there and done. So, yes, all eyes are going to be on Jarrett Stidham. For people in the national media, if you're trying to put together your media and marketing packages, it doesn't seem as sexy to say, hey, Jarrett Stidham versus Drake May in the AFC Championship game. It doesn't matter. The Broncos once again open up this week as underdogs at home against the New England Patriots. And you know what? This is a position that this Broncos team thrives in. They don't mind being the underdogs. They're confident in one another. This is a close locker room. It's a mature locker room. And Stidham, as much of a veteran presence as he has been, he's been waiting for this opportunity if it ever had to arise, and he's stayed ready. So now the keys get handed over to Jarrett Stidham, who has a chance here with 1 win on Sunday. If he can find a way to lead the Broncos to a victory against New England, Denver is going back to the Super Bowl in Santa Clara. It's a nice storyline. It writes itself maybe a Nick Foles-like renaissance here for the Broncos in 2026. We'll take a look at all that, obviously, as we continue throughout the week here on Locked On Broncos. But coming up next, we're going to dive deeper into where Jarrett Stidham can help out the Broncos offense, what we saw in the preseason that gives us a little bit of confidence in him stepping up and obviously playing well against New England. You're going to get all that here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Broncos country, today's episode show is brought to you by our friends over there at the Ultimate Quarterback. Look, draft pick positioning is set around most of the National Football League, and many teams are looking to find their next franchise quarterback. If you ever wish to become a pro quarterback, getting drafted first overall by whatever your favorite team may be, well, guess what? Now you can, because there is a mobile game just for you. It's called Ultimate QB Football Legend, and in this game, you get to step into the cleats of the #1 draft pick quarterback, and it is your job to lead your team to greatness to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the #1 quarterback career mode game that's out there on mobile app stores, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control where you could sign contracts, you could train and level up, upgrade yourself, build chemistry with your teammates, and you can also give input to your GM on roster moves. Ultimate QB is totally free to play. It has no ads, and it works 100% offline. Just head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in your app store. We got a special gift and offer for all of you here at Locked On Broncos. Use promo code Locked On in all caps to get a free boost to start your career. Ultimate QB, Football Legend, QB1, It's your legacy. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over there at Prize Picks. In the big game, it's almost here, and there is no better way to stay locked into every moment than with Prize Picks, the daily fantasy app where it always feels good to be right, because with football season coming down to its final stretch, now is the perfect time to close it out strong, and that's with Prize Picks, because Prize Picks makes watching games even more exciting by letting you build simple lineups around player projections. There are no drafts, no waiting, just football action all the way through the playoffs. And Prize Picks, it's easy to get started, where you pick 2 or more players and you choose more or less on their projections here. And one great way to keep playing fantasy football even after the season-long leagues are finished, Prize Picks allows you to stay in the game, and the new social feed makes it fun to follow friends, share your lineups, and get inspiration from other players. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Jarrett Stidham now has the keys to the kingdom here as the Denver Broncos have 2 games remaining, only one of them being guaranteed. And if they win on Sunday, they're heading back to Santa Clara for Super Bowl 60, where they have a chance to win a Super Bowl championship here. There's a lot of storylines that will obviously lead us up to the AFC Championship game, and hopefully we'll be talking about a Super Bowl run here for the Denver Broncos. But you get that here daily on Locked On Broncos. If you want more exclusive content, we encourage you to become an everyday or all-access member here today. And here's what you're going to get. There's all 22 film breakdowns that are going up here of Jarrett Stidham, what he did in the preseason, and how it could translate well here for the Broncos against the New England Patriots. All 22 film breakdowns of that. Post-game locker room interviews coming out of Saturday's playoff win against the Buffalo Bills are in there. You get an ad-free version of the show. You get access to our Discord, where we're building a community for members in Broncos country, one-on-one texting with Sarah and I, a newsletter version of the show that goes out every day, and so much more. So become an everydayer, all-access member today. Make sure you go to the show notes down below or go to lockdownbroncos.supercast.com here. Let's get into where Jarrett Stidham can help out the Broncos offense this week against the New England Patriots. Now, I think one of the things that we have to highlight and emphasize here is going to be ball security. Jarrett Stidham, for the most part, does a really good job of protecting the football. And look, there's a limited amount of sample size in regular season games for Stidham. He's balled out. He's played well in the preseason. This past preseason, he put on his best display yet in just 2 games of action here for the Broncos, where he completed 30 of 36 passes in 2 games, 376 yards, 4 touchdowns, had a near perfect passer rating all throughout the preseason. But in those, and you'll see it in the film breakdowns for the Everyday All Access Club here, but you see with Stidham, he is confident in where he's going. He knows where his first read is. He knows where to identify coverages. He makes the right decision. I'd say the one thing that maybe Jarrett does not have, and there are a couple of things, but the main thing that Jarrett does not have that Bo Nix has that certainly helps him succeed in the offense, he doesn't necessarily have Bo Nix's mobility, right? We talk about Bo's ability to avoid sacks. That's one of the more elite reasons that Sean Payton drafted him, because Bo is very good in this category. He's the least sacked quarterback in the NFL this season, and obviously was not sacked in Saturday's game against the Buffalo Bills. That ability to understand the pocket around you, combined with his athleticism, mobility, that made it difficult. He could throw the ball away. He could evade and maybe rush forward for yards. But here's the thing about Stidham. Stidham is not afraid to use his legs. He may not be as fast as Bo Nix, but he knows how to take good angles if he has to fight for positive yards. There was even one play in the preseason. It was like 3rd, I think, in 15, and he had an 18-yard scramble play to pick up a first down. So he is smart. He knows where to go. He's decisive with the football, but it is going to change a little bit. Yes, he played well in the preseason. This New England Patriots defense is going to be a tough test, but I think that they're going to have a good game plan in place. And one of the best things that can help Stidham is the mixed balance between what I think is going to be under center looks for him this week versus being in the shotgun. And yes, with Bo Nix, there's times where they were under center the last handful of weeks. I think you will see more of an emphasis from Jarrett Stidham under center, more so than we saw from Bo Nix. But I think there are a lot of different things that can open up there. Defenses know that Jarrett is not as mobile as Bo, but Jarrett is smart. Jarrett makes the right decision. He protects the football. But the run game, I think Jarrett operating under center well opens up things in play action. Now, if Sean Payton and the Broncos offense can learn to commit to the run game and stick with it versus just giving Jaleel and RJ Harvey 10 total carries combined, there's going to be a really awesome chance that the Broncos can beat the New England Patriots and the offense can play well enough to win against a very stingy New England Patriots defense going into next week. I think we have to highlight that here. But I think one of the bigger questions here when we talk about this is it's the confidence here that maybe Broncos fans have or don't have in Jarrett Stidham. It's very much apparent that Sean Payton, Davis Webb, these two guys, we talk about the quarterback brain trust of this team. Davis Webb, Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and the other quarterbacks in that room, they have such a monumental role here. And while Bo is going to be out and Bo's not going to necessarily be around this week because he's having surgery on Tuesday, Jarrett has been in that meeting room all season long. And here's the thing. I think a lot of fans are wondering whether or not he gets first-team reps throughout the season in practice. That's not the case. Bo Nix gets all the first-team reps throughout the regular season in practice. And the reason Sean Payton highlighted that is if we have a team period with 10 plays and I'm giving Bo 6 plays, and I'm giving Stidham 4. If you're splitting reps in the regular season, usually it's an indicator that you might be playing two quarterbacks. He says that's not the case for us. Bo is our guy. But now Jarrett Stidham is going to get all of those reps here this week at practice. But one thing that Jarrett has done well all season long that doesn't get discussed, we don't always get to see, he has commanded the scout team offense, right? So when the Broncos are preparing for an opponent, Jarrett is running scout team quarterback running the same stuff that the Broncos opposing defense is going to be facing that week. And there have been times where even Sean Payton himself admitted in a conference call with us on Sunday morning that there are times with Stidham that he's got such strong mental aptitude. He's smart, he's accurate, he's decisive with the football. There's times in practice when he's running the scout team where he's making the Broncos starting defense look bad. And so for Sean, he says, I'm looking at Vance Joseph and I'm like getting pissed because Stidham is making our defense look bad at times. That is where you want things to be. And I'll say this as well. You look at the Broncos, this is something that fans don't normally get to see. But when we get to go in there, the Broncos always highlight every week their game balls after a victory. They don't do it if there's a loss. But there's been a lot of wins this year for Denver. So on the wall, they have game balls for the guys who played in the games, but they also have a subsection for game balls for guys who were scout team or special, guys that in the practice squad, players of the week, so to speak. So Jarrett Stidham has certainly earned that because of how he's operated the scout team. And then you got other practice squad guys that are filling in here. But I also think, too, the connection, if we go back to the preseason, Jarrett Stidham had a really good connection with not only Troy Franklin, but with Pat Bryant, with guys like Michael Bandy. I know Trent Sherfield was on the roster at one point. Evan Ingram was the benefactor of one of his biggest catch and runs that he's had all year, and that came in the preseason. Granted, it's preseason. We understand that here. But the thing that you want to evaluate when you're watching Jarrett, if you go back and decide to look at his preseason tape is, okay, how does he command the huddle? How does he command the offensive scheme? Does he operate it with comfort? I'm looking at these things, and I see that here with Jarrett Stidham. I even remember, too, there were times in the preseason, we had some debates from fans of Locked On Broncos in our comment section or on social media that were saying, Jarrett Stidham should be the starting quarterback, not Bo Nix, which in my opinion was always silly. But once again, Jarrett's experience and the fact that he has been in the system for 3 years, I think there's a lot of value to be had in that. I don't think that can be discounted. This is different than, Tua Tagovailoa going out with an injury, and all of a sudden now the Miami Dolphins are relying on Quinn Ewers. This is a different scenario. Yes, Quinn Ewers in the same system, so to speak, in his season in Miami, but Jarrett Stidham has years of experience here. He understands the new layers that have been added there. And of course, Davis Webb is going to be working very closely with him. So now it's going to be Stidham as the starter. You're going to have Sam Ehlinger as the backup. And now Ben DiNucci will be that practice squad third string emergency quarterback because of his familiarity being inside the system in this room with Davis Webb, and obviously having that familiarity of being there with Sean Payton in 2023 when Sean first came throughout the entire summer, the preseason, but ultimately the Broncos had to make space on their roster, so they did end up cutting him for that there. So for me, I think that Stidham's experience, I think his mental aptitude, as Sean would say, I'd say his ability to process, recognize coverages, make good decisions, and I also think his arm is underrated. Is it as strong as Bo Nix's? No, but it doesn't have to be. Jarrett can make the necessary throws possible to help the Broncos get to Super Bowl 60 here. And he's going to have that opportunity to do it against his former team, the New England Patriots. And Josh McDaniels, who obviously knows him a little bit. I'm sure that he's going to try to share some intel with the Patriots defensive coordinator here. But for Jarrett Stidham, a chance to also write his own story this week for the Denver Broncos as they look to advance to the Super Bowl once again here. And as this is the only game remaining right now that is guaranteed for the Broncos, what does the early indication look like for the injury report this week? And could J.K. Dobbins return to the mix? We'll discuss that more here on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by our friends over there at FanDuel, and the AFC and NFC Championship games are here for the NFL playoffs, and FanDuel, they are in playoff mode because every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel, they are giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside of the app. And each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to the bets that you most like, especially this week as the Broncos open up as 4.5-point home underdogs against the New England Patriots. You can put it on the money line where the Broncos can win outright in this game, and you can apply a profit boost to that. Plus, you could do player props like anytime touchdown scorers, whether it be RJ Harvey, Evan Ingram, Cortland Sutton. Could there be a defensive player that could score a touchdown? All that is inside of the FanDuel Sportsbook app. And the boosts give you more juice on the bets that you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. As we jump into the fourth quarter action of today's episode, Locked On Broncos, we're going to go through the Broncos' early estimated injury report and some storyline outlooks on the injury side of things. I know a lot of Broncos fans are wanting to know, could J.K. Dobbins be back this week? I'll go into telling you why I don't think that's going to be the case, but I want to say thank you once again for tuning in, making us your first listen, however you choose to do so. Broncos country, regardless of the roller coaster, regardless of Bo Nix being out for the remainder of the playoffs, that's a huge bummer. But you know what? Your Broncos football team that you root for every Sunday, they're going to the AFC Championship game. They have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. So let's enjoy the moment. Let's enjoy where we're at right now before we get into the hypotheticals as to what does it look like if the Broncos don't make it. We're not diving into that. We're not even entertaining the thought of that. This is the Broncos week, and they're going to be ready for that moment. I have a strong feeling about that, and so much can be based on how, obviously, the guy we talked about on today's show, Jarrett Stidham, how he plays. But a lot of Broncos fans want to know, is J.K. Dobbins, or could he return this week against the New England Patriots? I think that there is a chance that he could, but here's why I'm saying right now it's at 0%. Until JK moves from the side field, which he was on the side field for the first time since having that surgery on his Liz Frank injury that he suffered in Week 10 against the Las Vegas Raiders on Thursday Night Football. This was his first time last week being on the side field. That is generally what we consider a ramp-up process. That's a good sign. Being on the side field is great. Sean Payton himself, before he even appeared on the side field, said that JK, he's close, or as he's closer than maybe most people think. Does that mean AFC Championship game this week? Here's why I say it's 0% right now. Wednesday will be the first time that the Broncos practice this week. If JK is on the side field, that's a great indicator that, hey, you know what? He's doing well in terms of his on-field progress, but I'm not considering him even remotely playing until we see him on the actual practice field. So if this week when we go out there, he's doing team stretch, he's doing individual period here with the Broncos, then I'll say, okay, you know what? He's got a real legitimate shot to return. And I know a couple of weeks ago, Tony Romo said when they talked to Sean Payton in their meeting that they said that maybe he could be back for the AFC Championship game. Certainly a possibility, but as I say it right now, it's 0% until he's actually on the practice field itself, folks. The side field, it doesn't necessarily give you a lot of leeway. That doesn't activate him. It's when he steps foot on the actual practice field with his team and goes through team stretch or individual period where his 21-day window officially opens. So if that happens on Wednesday or Thursday, maybe we can see an outside shot here. But I also think we need to be realistic about this, folks. Yes, JK has been the Broncos' most productive running back this season. And I think if he hadn't had that freak injury happen to him, I think he would have surpassed well over 1,500 yards rushing on the season. It was a terrific year for JK. And I know people are mad about the injury history of this latest injury. That's out of his control. But here's why I would say let's pump the brakes on raising our expectations, even if JK does hypothetically play on Sunday. JK hasn't played football since Week 10. He hasn't had the grind, the wear and tear, the on-field contact, running in between the tackles, or having that moment where, hey, you're trying to run through the A or the B gap and an offensive or defensive lineman steps on your foot. How does he handle that? Like, there has to be this ramp-up period here for JK from a physical standpoint that we have to see. And even if he plays, it isn't going to be the full workload. It's not, JK, you're getting every single touch. You're going to get 20 carries a game. I don't even think if he comes back, I don't even think he's going to be the guy who gets to start here because RJ Harvey has gotten that role since obviously JK has been sidelined with the injury. And it's not to say that, JK can't do it. JK, as I mentioned, folks, I feel like he was the best productive rusher there. I think when fully healthy, no limitations, I would start J.K. Dobbins right now over R.J. Harvey, just as R.J. continues to get ingrained in the process, learn the offense more, and handle that workload. The dynamic between Dobbins and Harvey, honestly, when you look back at it, is a big reason why the Broncos, I think, were winning early on, and they were having success because now defenses are saying, hey, when R.J. Harvey's in the game, they don't respect his ability to run in between the tackles, right? If it's inside runs, they believe that they're going to get a stop. They're going to get yards, tackled for a loss behind the line of scrimmage. And then they believe that ideally for Harvey, when he's in that, hey, it's an outside run with him because he's the outside zone guy that the Broncos feel like he's got the speed to get up the sideline. However, it has not worked out well for Denver consistently enough this year. Now you see RJ sometimes struggle inside where he gets stopped and the defenses plug the A gap and they fill their linebackers. Or they slant inside and take away those inside run lanes. And it's just big on big at that point. And linebackers are coming in because there's contact. There's no holes for him to hit and actually get north-south with. That's an execution thing here. And JK, I think, was better at being patient behind that. But once again, RJ is a rookie who's had to accelerate his learning process and how much he can actually handle because of that injury, because Denver has had to rely on that. They drafted him with premier capital. RJ is going to be just fine, folks. And it's crazy, though. But then he makes a play where he can catch it out in the flat, make 3 or 4 defenders miss, and then suddenly get 12 to 15 yards there. His contact balance is insane. His ability to run through contact is very valuable. But the Broncos have to diversify their run looks here, I think, for RJ to really get in rhythm and get going. And I have a feeling they will try that here, regardless if JK plays or not. But you need Jaleel and you need JK to have not JK. You need Jaleel and RJ to certainly have more than 10 carries combined between the two. So we will monitor the J.K. Dobbins situation all throughout the week here at practice. Pat Bryant, I believe, will be ready to go next Sunday against the New England Patriots. We'll have to see. He put out some social media posts right after the game saying that he'll be back spinning, that he's good to go. But that's out of the Broncos' hand. He has to clear some of the things, obviously, in the NFL's concussion protocol that is set by an independent neurologist. So our hope is that Pat will be okay. We'll be ready to rock and roll on Sunday. Troy Franklin's going to be a little more tricky because he suffered that hamstring injury on Frank Crumb's touchdown catch, and he immediately went to the locker room. He did not return. We didn't see him after the game in the locker room, and you know how hamstrings, how tricky they are. I would not put out as the expectation that Troy Franklin's going to be ready to go this week. We'll just have to monitor that. Wednesday will give us a little bit of an idea. But what does that mean for the Broncos wide receiver depth here? Don't be surprised if Marvin Mims pops up on the injury report this week with a back injury, because on his touchdown catch, he ran back first essentially into a camera lens. And obviously that isn't an inanimate object. It's foreign. When you hit a camera lens that's pretty big, that's going to hurt, especially at the speed in which Marvin was moving. So I wouldn't be surprised he pops up with back soreness there, but I think he'll be ready to rock and roll next week against New England, obviously. So what does this mean about Denver's wide receiver room and maybe positions that, or roster moves that they can certainly make here? Elijah Moore, I think that maybe this would be the expectation. He was activated this week, but was inactive. I think that was to reward him for what he's been able to do on the scout team here for Denver. He might get his first actual activity as a Denver Bronco in Sunday's game against the Patriots, and got some familiarity against New England because he was a member of the Buffalo Bills early on this season. So that is something to factor into the equation there. But with Denver's depth, it would not shock me, especially if you're a little eerie about the status of Pat Bryant or Troy Franklin, which I don't think Troy's going to play, as I've mentioned. But with all things considered, you need insurance at this position. So Elijah Moore could be active. A.T. Perry has been on the practice squad all year and continues to develop. From what I'm told from someone inside the Broncos building, they like where A.T. Perry is at. He's one of those developmental guys that Sean Payton has highlighted as someone who can help us down the road. That trajectory might have to be sped up if injuries continue to persist at wide receiver. And then Denver also has Michael Bandy, who Jarrett Stidham has a lot of familiarity with going back through training camp, considering the connection that they had in the various periods working together in the preseason. But once again, if Pat Bryant can play, I think that Jarrett Stidham to that Pat Bryant connection, I think that is going to thrive, because we saw it thrive in the preseason. I saw it thrive personally at training camp. And then maybe things open up here for this Broncos offense, even for a guy like Evan Ingram as well, who had that 58-yard catch and run in the preseason off of Stidham, off the play action there. So maybe we'll see that. But maybe we'll even monitor as well whether or not Denver brings in a wide receiver here, and we'll see what other roster moves they have along the way here. But with that said, Broncos country, that will wrap up today's episode of the show. Just a reminder, make sure if you haven't done so already, we encourage you, give the Everydayer All Access tier a try here today as part of the Everydayer Club, where you get exclusive content, all 22 film breakdowns. You got PJ Locke's interception up. You've got Jaquan McMillan's interception up in terms of an all 22 breakdown. This week, you're going to get the Bo Nix legacy drive broken down on all 22, plus an in-depth look at Jarrett Stidham and how he operated this offense, all on the Everydayer Club All Access tier. You get that. So check it out. And then tomorrow, Sarah and I, we're going to jump in and we're going to talk about some of the key storylines heading into Sunday's AFC Championship game between Denver and the New England Patriots. And we'll give you a little bit of an early preview. You get all that on tomorrow's episode of the show, Broncos Country. We'll see you then.